Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the latest Advanced Health Seminar on Clinical Research in the UAE, organized in partnership with Synapse Medical and Connect Communications. The COVID-19 pandemic has not only demonstrated the importance of clinical trials globally, but provided important stepping stones to improve the way in which medical trials are conducted. The Middle East has historically been overlooked for clinical trials participation, but the UAE world-class infrastructure, competitive education sector, improving research and development capabilities and availability of the skilled doctors means that we can become a hub to attract more clinical trials. In this session, we will discuss the benefits of clinical research on scientific understanding, policy making, clinical practice, and patient outcome. We will review the current research environment and challenges in the UAE with a view to understanding the partnerships, funding, and education required to continue to drive towards a world-class medical ecosystem. I'm very fortunate to have a really world-class panelist here with us today who will be sharing their views. We have Professor Alawi Al-Sheikh Ali. He is the provost of the Mohammed bin Rashid University of Medicine and Health Sciences and the dean of the university's renowned College of Medicine. He is an accomplished clinician and medical research. He studied in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and became the first Emirati to graduate from this prestigious US university. We also have Dr. Ahmed Abu Dahab. He is the Vice President of Sobi Middle East and Turkey. Sobi is a Swedish biopharmaceutical company dedicated to producing innovative treatments that transform lives. The company employs more than 1,500 people globally and has an office in the Dubai Science Park that has expanded very recently. With us also Dr. Hassan Al-Nashnash. He is a professor and a director of the Biomedical Engineering Graduate Program at the American University of Sharjah. He is a published author. Dr. Hassan has been pivotal in establishing the bioengineering research and graduate programs at AUS. And last but not least, Dr. Maryam Zalzala. She is an award-winning researcher and the current regional clinical research lead overseeing all Pfizer's clinical research activities in the Middle East and North Africa. I'd like to start the webinar by asking Professor Alawi and really for you to set the scene for everyone here and the listeners about the research capabilities in the UAE and how it has changed in the last 10 years or so. So an overview of past and present on clinical research, if you will, in the UAE.
Thank you very much, Marwan, for the kind introduction, and thanks to you and to Dubai Science Park team for organizing this session and similar sessions, which are, I think, very important for us as we socialize and share common opportunities and common challenges and learn from each other. It's a pleasure to be part of this with Dr. Ahmed, Dr. Hassan, and Dr. Maryam, and your colleagues from both academia and industry. I think any discussion on research capacity or research productivity, clinical research, or any other form of research in the UAE, you could either look at it using sort of a retrospective lens and see how things have evolved over the past few decades. And that's important, and it's important to sort of keep things contextual. You know, the UAE as a country, as a federation, will be celebrating its 50th anniversary next year. So we're talking about a very young country when it comes to research or any metric for human development, for that matter. So we've come a long way from 1976, when the first higher education institution, national university, was inaugurated in the UAE. So if you look through that retrospective lens and keep things in context, you'll realize that there's been tremendous development in terms of research infrastructure, research visibility, and research productivity. A team from the university, from MBRU, recently published work looking at research productivity over the past 20 years in the UAE. And if you just look at the number of publications with UAE affiliations over the last 20 years, there's been a 16-fold increase. And that curve is on the upward trajectory. If you then normalize that for population growth, obviously the UAE population has grown tremendously over the last 20 years, you still see a 6-fold increase in research productivity. If you normalize to the economic power of the UAE using gross domestic product as a metric, if you normalize to GDP, which has also dramatically increased over the last 20 years, you still see a 3-fold, a tripling of research productivity over the past 20 years. So that's all very, a very impressive growth in research productivity. And that has been driven by a number of things, mainly, I would say, growth of higher education institutions with more emphasis on research. Now, if you then switch to a more looking forward, prospective lens, and you keep in mind the context not of how young the country is, but the context of how ambitious the UAE is, then you realize, well, yes, it's been tremendous growth, but there's also tremendous potential and opportunity that we need to seize to leverage this growth and grow even further. And that is reflected in what happens when you start normalizing for GDP. So, and also what happens when you compare the UAE to other countries with more or less similar GDP and maybe similar or smaller size. So if the two examples that come to mind, if you compare the UAE to Singapore or to Ireland, relatively small countries with about a little less GDP compared to the UAE, you will see that the research productivity in the UAE still has ways to go if you compare to those countries. So the UAE's, if some of the numbers that we looked at were comparing how much does UAE GDP contribute to the GCC and to the Arab and to the world GDP, and then how much does it contribute to the research productivity in the GCC, the Arab world, and the world. So UAE GDP is about a quarter of the GCC GDP, 27%, but research productivity in the UAE is about 18% of research productivity in GCC. The Arab world, we contribute about 14% of the GDP in the Arab world, but we contribute 7% of research productivity in the Arab world. The global GDP, we contribute about 0.5% of the global GDP, but we contribute about 0.2% of the global research productivity. So our GDP is about 2 to 3 times in terms of contribution than our research productivity, which I think highlights the potential for us to build on the tremendous growth that's been taking place in the last 20 years and do more. And that's already happening, and we could maybe elaborate on some of the opportunities and the challenges moving forward with other colleagues on the panel.
Right. Now, I think all of you would agree that doing research is all about, connecting the dots, working between universities, hospitals, industry, and government, and perhaps also maybe the investment community. How are we connected in that world, if you will? Is there a missing link somewhere, or are we pretty connected, but it's just that the numbers are quite small? Dr. Alawi, I'd like you to take that as well.
I think one of the things, there's been a lot of lessons learned in the last few months with the global pandemic. But one key theme, I think, throughout all these lessons is discovery. And one of the things that we've discovered has to do with sort of all the elements that are already in existence in our own local communities and national communities that maybe we knew existed, but we didn't realize the potential for collaboration, or in some instances we didn't know that they actually existed. But then we were for lack of a better word, we were forced by the pandemic to actually connect these elements together. And you know, we can talk about specific examples on how collaboration between an academic institution, a healthcare delivery institution, another healthcare delivery institution, you know, contributed significantly to our understanding of the disease and the virus and how we fight the pandemic with some practical, impactful things on clinical practice. Or with institutions sort of that are not traditionally thought of as research oriented or as academic, that we didn't know was possible. So I guess to answer your question, Marwan, yes, some of the connections were there. I think they were strengthened by the pandemic, and I think we need to be more proactive identifying these potential connections and then consciously work on making these connections, because science is increasingly collaborative. And we typically think of collaboration outside the UAE, typically, and typically outside the UAE with certain regions of the world. But actually, there's a lot to do with collaboration within the UAE, within the region, and perhaps with other parts of the world that we haven't been traditionally collaborating with.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll definitely come back and dwell on that a little bit more. Dr. Ahmed, I'd like to bring you into the picture and maybe perhaps start by telling us a little bit about Sobi's research activities here, because I know as a rare disease company, for you, you know, clinical research is an important element. And it's not only about accessing the market and selling your drugs. It's really more about understanding the patients and you know, their issues. So if you could tell us a little bit more about your activities in this area.
Yeah, we started in the Middle East or in Dubai, starting from Dubai back in 2012. And one of our main objectives was to bring research as well to the centers, to the we call centers of excellence, the main centers that treat these rare genetic or rare diseases. So we do in UAE, we do have a couple of clinical trials, but this is mainly focused on post-authorized products. The products already get approval either locally or in the States or in Europe. And also we do have some what we call them investigator-sponsored trials, which are for products which are you know, the hospital request to medically grants an approval to run some project or some trials on the particular products. I know that the intention is to participate, mainly for the center to participate more into phase 3 clinical trials. And this is what we face some challenges, especially with this, setting the feasibility studies for the hospital, because you know these studies are highly regulated by either the FDA or EMA. So this is where we face some challenges, but we do have a couple of trials in UAE, in Saudi Arabia. There is no doubt that sometimes Saudi Arabia takes the lead because also a number of patients, because usually these we are working and we work on diseases with a few patients. So with a bigger population, you see that in Saudi we find more patients who can get a benefit of the medication. However, UAE always come either first or second in the region with doing our trial, but it's mainly on post-authorized pharmaceutical products. And we wish that, so maybe discuss this at a later stage, that we see how we can involve the medical institute in phase 3 or pre-authorized product, because this is where we receive a lot of requests from the medical centers, so especially for diseases which has no treatment yet. So we do have positive experience, and I think it's increasing with time. I'm sure even the numbers shows that we started 2015 with the first trials, and today we have at least 3 ongoing trials in the medical centers.
Okay, very good, excellent. Dr. Hassan, since you have been already involved with the industry on the Biomedical Research Institute that you have set up in AUS. Tell us a little bit about your experience and how did that go, and what are the lessons learned from your end?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you, Mr. Marwan, for your question. Yeah, and of course, it's my pleasure to share with you some of our past experiences in this field. And I would like probably first to define this biomedical research. To me, it goes beyond just the clinical research. I would probably say that biomedical research involves, the clinicians and the scientists and the engineers, at least from our point of view, for finding solutions to, for disease like disease prevention, prognosis, diagnosis, treatment, etc. And to that end, usually we have the basic research and the applied research and the clinical research. And for us, maybe at universities with research institutes and graduate programs like master's and PhD programs, our experience has been mainly on the basic research, where we just focus on trying to understand, or add to the body of knowledge some understanding on the physical or chemical or biological mechanisms of life processes. And but engineers also work on the applied part of the research, where we focus on finding a solution to a specific problem. And those problems are usually given by clinicians to us. They're raised by clinicians. And that may not also, these two layers may not involve humans. In the applied, yes, sometimes it involves the human model or animal model. And in the clinical research, I must say that although we have had experiences with clinical establishments, but I wouldn't go to the point where we say we have been involved in clinical research yet. It's at that interface between applied and clinical. And let me share with you some of the experiences that we had. As you know, in our region here, our healthcare challenges, of course,
sorry to cut you off, but I think it's important for everyone to know that doing research is like building layers. So you will need to establish the basic research understanding for the researcher. Then, on top of that, you would do applied, then you will do translational. And then, at a later stage, you will be basically, going to the industry and collaborating on a more advanced level. So what you're doing is commendable, and you're building the foundation, which is important for the future.
Yeah, and if you just let me give you some examples of the type of research we've been doing and how we have collaborated with industry. And of course, when we say industry, we really mean companies, as well as we talk about hospitals and my group, our group is called the Neuroengineering Research Team or Research Group, and we are involved in several projects with focus on assessment of brain injury, trying to develop some quantitative measures for assessment of brain injuries, especially following cardiac arrest, spinal cord injuries, developing also flexible electrodes for interfacing with nerves, and also cortical source imaging using EEG. Let me start with the last project. The last project for brain source localization, this is in collaboration with our colleagues at Rashid Hospital, and this project was actually funded by Al Jalila Foundation, and we've been collaborating with them for the past 3 years, trying to solve an interesting problem to a neurologist, where they, like in the case of epilepsy, as part of the treatment, they'd like to localize the source of the epilepsy from the brain. So yes, we do measure the brain signals like EEG signals, but our job as engineers and mathematicians is to do what we call the inverse problem, where we use these signals and then solve some mathematical or use some mathematical techniques to localize the source of the epilepsy in the brain. This has actually been successful, and we have published in this domain. The other project, but this project is in collaboration with our partners at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. Here we try to develop some quantitative measures for measuring the level of brain injury following cardiac arrest. We use also the usual engineering and mathematics to do that. But until now, most of our measures were using animal models. We had some clinical trials on patients in the intensive care unit where we used our algorithms on those signals, but it has not, and we even have a patent for that, but we have not reached a point where we can say this is, ready to go to the market. And also with our partners at the National University of Singapore, we have had a really very successful collaboration in developing techniques for assessment of spinal cord injuries. Again, we stimulate the limbs, we measure the signals from the scalp area, and again, we use some techniques to quantify the information. And this has been one of the successful projects.
Excellent.
There are other colleagues who are working in cancer therapy
Sure.
and also finding therapies even for COVID-19 virus. I mean, I can talk for hours about their projects, but we have some really nice successful stories that we can talk about later on if time permits.
Sure. Let me move back again to the industry, and Dr. Miriam has been really instrumental in working with the Ministry of Health, putting together some of the guidelines for clinical trials. So, Doctora, maybe you give us, let's say, a past and present situation of the clinical trials, just for the audience to know what has been going on in the past few years.
So thank you, Marwan, for giving us the opportunity to be part of this collaborative forum. Dr. Alawi, Dr. Ahmed, and Dr. Hassan, thank you for your positive remarks. In terms of the support of the industry, in fact, I mean, individually, I mean, as colleagues or research in charge for our companies, I mean, we've been supporting clinical research heavily, and we've been, working closely to bring further clinical trials to the country. But in addition to that, I mean, we have been also privileged to have the Pharmac support. And it's a group of 24 pharmaceutical company. Part of the Pharmac, there are research work group that I'm currently leading, and I've been leading since 2016. So we've got probably a significant number of members who are research specialists in different pharma companies, and we work hand in hand, sharing knowledge and expertise internally, supporting the UAE. But furthermore, we are working with a number of projects to support the Ministry of Health, regulators, training, building capacities to support the research conduct. So one of probably the great achievement, and really we thank the UAE government and the Ministry of Health, is actually establishing the clinical research guidelines for the Ministry of Health, for MOHAP. And these guidelines actually were published in 2019. And these guidelines actually are quite comprehensive, but it has a specific requirement, specific timelines. So it really supports in having that regulatory infrastructure to support the research conduct in the country. So we believe that was a really positive step The drug importation process and the drug control department support is there as well, and it's very efficient. So the timelines are, I would say they are very competitive. The process looks simpler as well than the past. And I believe it's still evolving as well. I mean, with the pandemic situation that we are in, we're seeing more attention from the regulators to support the startup process, and we're expecting as well an amendment to come up very shortly. So that was in fact a positive step. Clinical research phase 1 to phase 4 it can be reviewed and is subjective to the governmental review and approval. So the process is really much clearer. We believe that that was a great step, and still there are areas of improvement, I would say, to build that the proper research ecosystem.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. I know that research is all about collaborating, and sometimes it's about the chicken or the egg. Do you have the regulations first and then you do the research, or you bring in the research and then you build the regulations around it? And I think that also takes me to the question about people and human resources and students. So Dr. Alawi, I think more than anyone else, and perhaps also Dr. Hassan, you are really at the heart of encouraging the next generation of students to be studying sciences in general, whether it is medicine, whether it's biomedical engineering. And I think if we were not able to encourage the next generation of the youth to really embrace science in the fullest way, we will still be struggling to have research and clinical trials. So Dr. Alawi, I know you're at the heart of this, and this is what you do on a daily basis. But have you seen a change in the perception of students in the last few years about studying science and health in general?
My personal impression is yes. I can't quote you any systematic data, but that's sort of my impression. I think, and I sense also that more and more universities now focus on research methodology and research skills as sort of a key part of any curriculum. We certainly have that here at MBRU. In our undergraduate and graduate programs are typically research driven, but even our undergraduate MBBS program is a very heavy research curriculum that runs throughout the program. And so the answer is yes. I think if there is one thing that drives the engine of any university is how good that university is in pursuing talent. And I think the pursuit of talent is really both ways: attracting talent to come in to the university or to the country, but also being able to generate talent. So university as a producer of talent. But the pursuit of talent really is the first and key step. And then you cannot obviously stop there. There's no point of pursuing and attracting talent and then not empowering it. So I think if you pursue talent, you then have to empower that talent. That's where funding for research comes. And more important than, well, equally important, perhaps more important than funding, is processes in place to make sure that that funding can actually be utilized for research. There's no point of winning a big grant if you can't use it to hire somebody to support the research, or you cannot get the consumables that you need on time. So pursue talent, empower talent, and then celebrate that talent. And that's where a culture of research within the university, but more importantly beyond the university, is celebrated throughout the community. So, and we're seeing that now in the UAE. So the national discourse at the level of government or outside government, there's more dialogue now about research and development, about science, about space, about getting to Mars. All these things are very important to inspire the next generation of scientists. Mm-hmm. So judging by all of these observations, I think the answer is yes. We just need to maybe become more systematic in studying this phenomenon, and then emphasize the things that are working in this equation of pursuing talent, empowering talent, and then celebrating talent.
Right. Thank you very much. Dr. Hassan, I know you work with the students, obviously, and you get them engaged. But I think, one of the things that I see with the young students is that they don't see the impact of what they study. So, with basic research, and maybe perhaps it's a little bit better with applied research, it's not very visible. And when, young kids who are 12, 13, 15, and at the age of, deciding on what to study, if they don't see it, they don't get excited about it, and hence, they don't pursue it. So how is it that a university like AUS is able to demonstrate that in a bigger way?
Yeah, actually, this issue of education, and as Dr. Alawi said, having the talent or preparing the talent or bringing the talent, education basically. This is a core. I think it's a core issue. I'll address your question first, then I come back about and talk more about the talent to train or to actually prepare young students and young minds to be future scientists. Of course, starts really at the school level, not even at the university level. But at the university level, actually, part of the curriculum, and we stress this all the time, is to involve students in our research projects. Meaning, yes, we do have PhD students, we have master students working on their thesis, on their research problems, but to help them, to work with them, we always involve undergraduate students to do like some specific tasks to get them interested and excited. So this is part of our practice. Okay. But going back to the talent, I have some statistics here from the World Bank on the number of researchers, research scientists, as we call them, yes, per million population. And you have like on the top, like countries like Finland with more than 7,000 scientists, research scientists. And you have the United States sitting right in the middle with about 5,000. However, if you look at our part of the world, most of the countries, I looked at most of the countries in the Middle East and Arab countries, we have less than 1,000 scientists per million. And this actually raises, a flag that in order to be a research and knowledge-based economy, we really need to prepare the talent. And research is you teach research, and this is taught at the graduate level education, master's and PhD. And in my area of specialization, which is in the biomedical engineering, in the whole GCC, we have only 2 programs at the moment, and the 2 are in UAE. The first one was actually at the American University of Sharjah to offer Masters of Science in Biomedical Engineering in the whole GCC. Of course, there are other programs in Egypt, Iran, Libya, etc. But that shows you the small number of such programs to prepare the talent. And if you look at the PhD, the situation is not better. We have even smaller number of programs at the PhD level that teach biosciences and bioengineering. So my message really, I think, and I strongly believe that we need to invest more in starting graduate level education. At the undergraduate level education, I think we are doing very well in all disciplines, but the graduate level education, we need to invest more.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for this direct recommendation. I think, for sure, this is where all the heavy lifting happens, if you will, when it comes to research. Dr. Ahmed, we touched a little bit on the current challenges on doing clinical research here. What are the things you can point out and say, you know, that you wish was better as an environment for research and clinical trials?
From my perspective, I think we need to see stronger integration between national policies, research institute, and governmental institute. So we see there is an integration between these three parties. I think the more collaboration and integration within these three parties will have a positive reflect on the clinical research in UAE. After that, I think execution, facilitate research process. And I think the thing which differentiate UAE in general, in all aspects, that the execution, they are professional in execution and the fast execution, which I think this will facilitate even further the research in UAE. Third thing, which from pharma companies or from perspective, it should have a positive return on investment. We have always to think that pharma companies are profit-making organizations. They need more profit to fund the research so they can come up with another research, a third research, a fourth research. And this is how we need to think about it as well, that this research facilities or this research in UAE should reflect positively on the company as well. So this is how I look into it. And I think the UAE is on the right track for this, but especially number one, the integration between policy making institutions and governmental institute is highly needed to push it even further and to be highly distinguished in the region.
Right. Dr. Mariam, we spoke generally about the regulations and the guidelines. How about things that are related to privacy, access to data, willingness to participate from the patients? Are those things have also been tackled by the pharma group?
Thank you, Marwan, for the question. Indeed, that's a very good question. In fact, we still feel that there are areas of improvement, especially in regards to the patient and patient understanding of their rights, and especially in regards to clinical trial participation. So there are, one of our projects as well is to work closely with the Ministry of Health in developing materials addressed to the patient, providing them more of awareness about their rights, about the data privacy collection, etc. Still, there are areas of improvement, we believe, in the processes. In fact, we're still finding some hurdles with contractual process, for example, at institutional levels. Establishment of the clinical research unit isn't there in a number of institutions. So there is really that urgent need, the availability of clinical research coordinators and staff who could support that research conduct. It's a teamwork, as Dr. Alawi mentioned, and we really need that urgent support of having trained research caliber available at institutions. Now, from the pharma clinical research group, and I believe from the pharmaceutical companies, we've done a number of research training curriculums, good clinical practice curriculum, and training to develop capacity. But we still believe, there is a need of support from health authority, from institutional perspective in building that capacity, maybe in collaboration with the academia as well.
Right.
So I believe
Do you think this is something that happens at the university level, or it happens more as a bridge program after university and while they're working?
I think it could be a bridge program, and there could be an opportunity for interns as well from the university to participate probably and support those research units. I mean, there could be a lot of areas of opportunities to build that capabilities in the country.
Right. We have already opened the floor for questions, we have received a number of questions, and maybe Mariam, this one is for you. On which website would I be able to get information about the regulations for clinical trials in the UAE?
I believe the Ministry of Health, the MOHAP website, the regulations are posted there. And I
Okay.
believe one of their intention as well, they're probably going to have, a tab for the future separate for clinical trials. But I believe under the Ministry of Health website, the guidelines are posted there.
But I think maybe one of the takeaways of this webinar is really to create one consolidated website for all clinical trials that happens in the UAE, between Dubai, Abu Dhabi, the Northern Emirates. Since we are a small country, there are a lot of efforts everywhere. And it will be nice to have one portal that basically lists all the trials, from 1 to 4, to understand disease areas, what is happening, who's doing what. Maybe this is something that we can, take offline and discuss a little bit later. Dr. Alawi, perhaps the question is for you, and that is on regards to training graduates in clinical trials or in research in general. Is that something that is incorporated already in MBRU?
There's currently we don't have a dedicated graduate program in clinical research or public health epidemiology. There are graduate programs in public health in other universities in the UAE and the region.
Okay.
Clinical research methodology training is just a key component of the existing program. So in our Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, the 6-year MBBS program, there's a 5-semester longitudinal biostatistics, epidemiology, and clinical research methodology, and a capstone research project as part of embedded in the curriculum. So even though not everyone who graduates from the medical school will be a clinical researcher, but we believe that all of them need to be critical consumers of whatever the output of clinical research is. So it's really heavy on research methodology and understanding. I think there's a lot of room for non-degree programs that could be modular, very accessible, and relatively bespoke, and they'll target existing clinicians who are interested in doing clinical research but need to upskill in certain aspects. So those need to be made available. And I think partnership between industry through unrestricted grants to universities to develop such programs is really something that we could seize on right away. It's sort of
if you allow me, Doctor, I'd like to go back to the to the chart or to the web of the different parties that are involved in clinical research, and that is academia, government, funding, etc. Where should we start with?
In all of them.
Okay. So there is no, okay. I mean, they're all important, I'm sure.
Important.
A lot of times you hear that if you don't have the right talent, then why should you have funding? But then, if you have the talent, then you don't have the funding or the regulations, and, it just goes in circles.
Yeah. I think it's important to start in I said that tongue in cheek, but I really mean it, because if you start with one and ignore the other elements, then that one element that you started with, you can't do well.
Right. Right.
So if you get your funding and your talent and your resources perfectly aligned to do sort of a phase 3 or phase 2 or a phase 1 trial, but your regulations are not up to speed with oversight of these trials, with ensuring patient confidentiality, with ensuring patient choice. It's not enough to just sign a consent form, but really there are other ethical considerations. Then you're not doing it right. So everything needs to be worked on simultaneously. It's a system.
Correct.
And all these elements that you mentioned, Marwan, are critical.
Right. No, they are 100%. And thank you for that, Dr. Miriam. If I go back to you, and I know, working with different companies and different industry players, A lot of times we want to, create scale, because if you have scale, then you're able to involve more people. You can get more people, funding, companies, etc. Do you think if we pick one area of disease, let's say diabetes, and create, let's say, a central regional, project around this, and we become, Dubai or the UAE becomes really a regional center for that?
Thank you, Marwan, for the question. And probably I agree with Professor Alawi's comment that probably we need to distribute our effort in different aspects in regards to the research setup and also for the disease areas. I mean, rare disease is crucial for the region. We've got a very unique statistics. COVID, for example, the pandemic, it came a big surprise as well. So I believe the effort, and based on the company and their pipelines, you will see different projects, different data collection, registry, statistics tools are available, and I think that industry collaboration is crucial. So that's what's being supported with the Pharmag, and maybe with that development of the research infrastructure, sharing success stories. And at the moment also we have a very open dialogue with regulators, even with the Department of Health. We are seeing great progress as well in the research setup. It's more centralized. It's actually looks very positive, in fact, and supportive to the industry research. And having that open dialogue, addressing the gaps that we're seeing, especially with the processes, with the timelines, with the resources. It's really working hand in hand to improve the process and improve the startup requirements in the country. And hopefully we'll have a lot of success stories that we're distributing across. I mean, those success stories are really crucial. We are sharing them internally to provide more of assurance of the country capability, and hopefully we'll see more progress and more investment in terms of research in the region and also in UAE specifically.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Hassan, since you work with a lot of the students, do you see any room for startups and SMEs creating companies around the research projects that happens at the university?
Yes. I think the potential is there. I mean, we have had several experiences with patents coming out of some specific projects with the potential of being marketed. Unfortunately, we always faced a problem of marketing these ideas. You come up with the idea, you come up with the technology, it's there, but we as professors and even as students, first, we don't have the experience of doing that. We do the research, we do the teaching, we do all of these innovations, but then the next step, taking this innovation to the market, to the right customers, we don't have the time and we don't have the experience. So if you look at the portfolio of the university, and not just our university, many other universities, you will find many patents coming out. But how many of those patents have been marketed? So I think the issue is not with the idea generation, is not with the patent generation, it's the following step. I think that gap's still there.
I mean, that's equally important, having a tech transfer office, and tech transfer by itself is a huge subject, and there are people who are specialized in it. And I think, in my opinion, this is where collaboration is important. If you have a good scientist is maybe not a good marketeer, and vice versa. Absolutely. So there needs to be this match between science and business, and I think that's when things can happen. Dr. Ahmed, talking about the regional, let's say, center, and let's say creating a registry of all rare diseases, because at the end of the day, rare diseases are rare, and having a deep understanding of it needs a lot of putting together information. Do you think creating a neutral body for all, or a neutral registry for all rare diseases can elevate the status of the UAE and attract more research?
Definitely. And from industry perspective, this is what usually we look for. Because when we especially for rare diseases, if you have a reference center, a reference institute, so you can better understand the number, the demographies, the genotype, phenotype, then the next step is you think about research. And this is what I feel looking to my colleagues in Europe and the States. This is what they are way advanced than what we do here. There are some certain diseases that have very well developed registries, strong collaboration in centers in Western Europe or in the States, which I sometimes feel we really can do much better here. We have one language, we have strong collaboration. So in Europe, there are several languages. Here in Arab countries, there's only one language. We have, even with physicians, we have a very strong collaboration and a lot of meetings and congresses. So I know there are a lot of steps has been taken, a lot of initiatives has been taken for rare diseases to make the industry more enthusiastic to come in. And because if you look to the research, you will see rare diseases in the Middle East are more common than you see in Western countries. There is no doubt about this. However, we lack a strong center. There are a couple of centers, but we lack still. I think there is a room of improvement with this way for a stronger collaboration to collect all these data under one umbrella. And I think this will be a strong base and a strong start for further research into this area. And I think UAE and in general can for the rare diseases can take really a significant role in this connecting dots between other countries in the region.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I can say a couple of words about registries and rare or common diseases, I think we will probably be more successful if we identify individual champions to drive such registries than if we wait for a national or a subnational institution to start such registries. And there are stories, success stories in the cardiovascular cardiology research area in the region. Okay, so cardiovascular conditions are not rare, but within cardiovascular conditions, there are examples of registries of rare presentations that were done, but those were driven really by individuals who wanted to do this. Now, institutions could entice such efforts by calling for or providing funding and say there'll be a funding, but that funding is targeted towards establishing the region's first registry on rare disease X. So the institutions could play a role that way, but really you need the champions from the practicing clinicians and healthcare providers for such registries to thrive.
Right. I agree that that's another way. I mean, it could be an easier way, I think, of creating such a thing. Dr. Alawi, one of the questions that we have from the audience is about the availability of a research strategy. Now, I know that with the formation of the Ministry of Advanced Sciences, etc., do you see a research strategy for the UAE being put together, or again, this is too early, and you would want to see a more of a bottom-up approach?
No, I think that both are happening. So there is, the universities have some are articulating their research strategies. These are sort of universities. Some of the funding agencies have identified certain areas of focus, so that could be part of their research strategy. And the Office of Advanced Sciences and other entities in government, Ministry of Health, I think are now in the process of putting together a national document to articulate a national research strategy, not just in the life sciences, but in other disciplines also.
Mhm. Excellent, very good. Miriam, I think this question might be for you. If I am a physician and I'd like to participate in a global research program, is there a way for me to do so?
Well, that's a very good question, and there's always a need to have talented investigators or site staff. So I believe the best thing here is actually to approach the research unit of the institution, if there are, to highlight the interest in research. And I think this is the area where we would actually need support. Establishing a research unit where it could be actually where they can collaborate between the industry and between the investigator. They could support us with the feasibility, recommend potential investigators and site staff for us. So definitely there are a lot of areas of opportunities. We hope as well as an industry to further train and develop investigators as well and partner with the government in developing investigators as well, so that they could be actually the potential investigators for future.
Excellent, very good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And Marwan, sorry, since we opened the areas of improvement, also, we believe that there are a number of research organization or clinical research organization in UAE, but there are areas of improvement, and there are, a number of international CROs that are not available in the UAE. They work through subcontractors. They are contracted globally to support clinical trials. But with that subcontracting, it adds further hurdles. And probably, the region isn't selected because their offices aren't available. They're not physically available in the region. So we believe that there is an area of improvement in terms of the CRO establishment in the region. Maybe, Dubai Science Park could be a good platform to collaborate, probably to support them with their establishment. They are keen to support the industry. They're contracted globally. But with that lack of physical presence, we end up working with subcontracting, and the process is even further delayed.
Correct. We have only a few minutes left, so I'd like to leave the floor to all of you for your closing remarks, if you have any. Dr. Alawi, we'll start with you.
Well, other than thanking you, Marwan, and Dubai Science Park and the colleagues for this informative panel, I think I'd say that we've come a long way in the UAE in terms of research. We still have a long way to go because we remain a very ambitious country that always wants to do more. So, and I'm optimistic about the future.
Thank you very much, Mariam.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity, Marwan. We look forward to partnering together. There's a lot of opportunities in the UAE, and we've seen the remarkable support for the COVID vaccine in the UAE from the senior governmental to the patient themselves and their commitment. So this shows, the opportunity that is there in the country, and we look forward to build it further for various therapeutic areas.
Thank you. Dr. Hassan?
Yes, I'd like to thank you and Dubai Science Park also for giving us this opportunity. And I would also like to add that I think this country has a lot of successful examples of research and bioscience, bioengineering, and clinical work. However, I think we need to invest more, and as I mentioned earlier, we need to invest more, especially in education. And I think we have the golden opportunity, especially now, after experiencing this pandemic, and which shows the importance of biosciences and clinical research. So we need to invest in, I think, in this field. The same as we invested in building Burj Khalifa, which is a landmark in the whole world. So maybe we can come up with an equivalent breakthrough in biosciences and bioengineering as well.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ahmed?
Thank you so much for giving us a chance and opportunity. I would like this as an opportunity to ask a research institute to keep asking the pharma and industry for more research. pharma industry has a wealthy and rich in research, and this will benefit at the end the patients. And this is a mutual goal for the research institute, the pharma industry, and the policymakers, put this way. And from us, the more positive pressure that we receive from research institute, medical centers, the more we will deliver.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. I'm really delighted to again, for all of your thoughts and discussions. I think this format was very much informal and informative at the same time, and I really look forward to keeping in touch with you personally. And I'd like to also thank the participants and the panelists. Really excellent questions. There was a lot of good questions that we hope to be addressed in the future, and we'll be definitely sharing the recording as well with those who have participated. So thank you, and have a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Assalam.